joining us remotely via Microsoft Teams. Members of the Joint Committee joining us remotely may wish to keep their camera on at all times, but switch their microphone off until they wish to speak. All other remote participants should have their cameras and microphones switched off during the meeting unless they are speaking. Members and officers in Committee Room 2 should ensure that their microphones are at the correct height, and when speaking, you should speak into them as directly as possible. There is no alarm test scheduled today, so if the klaxon goes off in the townhouse, we should make our way to the exit through the door from which you came, down the main staircase and out the front reception door. We will head to the Arts Centre and wait until clearance is given to return to the building. Mobile phones should be put on silent mode. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. And can I confirm that the recording has started also?
That started, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will be chairing today. Councillor Yule's not available. So I would welcome you all to this meeting of the Aberdeen City Region Deal Joint Committee on the 14th of February 2025. So can we have the sediment, please, Mark?
So just to make sure who's all in attendance, so we've got Councillor Yule's obviously absent. Councillor Radley?
Present.
Councillor Allard?
Present.
Councillor Owen?
Present.
Councillor Petrie?
Here.
Councillor Stirling?
Present.
We've got apologies from George Boyne, Jennifer Craw?
Present.
And Sir Ian Wood.
Present.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much.
And obviously subbing for Councillor Yule, we've got Councillor McClellan.
Present.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 2 then on the agenda is determination of urgent business, and there is no urgent business to be considered. And determination of exempt business, there are no exempt items on the agenda today. That takes us to item 4. Can I ask members if you have any declarations of interest or transparency statements, please? Councillor Owen, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I make my usual one in terms of being a director of the One Lord, please? I know that they've got the wording on the basis that it's already in the minute. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in the same position in terms of my interests being already minuted.
Thanks, Sir Ian. Jennifer?
And I would add a declaration of interest as being a member of the One Board, also the Food Hub NES Limited Board related to One Seed Pod, Bio Aberdeen Limited Board in relation to One Biohub, and also Sarah and I are both members of ETZ Limited.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I don't see any other indications, so they will be noted.
Councillor Allard's got, sorry, Councillor Allard.
Sorry, I don't see his hand coming up, but thank you, Councillor Allard.
Yes, the same kind of transparency statement. I'm on the board of One.
Okay, thank you very much. If folks could put their hand up, I'll try and catch you that way. I didn't see that. Apologies for that, Councillor Allard. That takes us then to item 5, the minutes of previous meetings. And we have the minute of the 15th of November 2024 and the minute of the meeting on the 10th of January 2025. Those pages are start at page 3 to 12. Can I ask, please, in the first instance, that you can agree that the minute of the meeting on the 15th of November is accurate, and that's for approval? Can we agree that, please? And that's agreed. And likewise, the meeting of the 10th of January, can we agree that the minute of proceedings is accurate and approved? That's agreed. Okay, thank you very much indeed. That takes us then to item 6 on the agenda, which is the Aberdeen City Region Deal Quarterly Dashboard Update, and that starts at page 13 on your pack. And can I ask Stuart, please, to make the introduction? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stirling. At the previous meeting of the Joint Committee, we were asked to provide an executive summary of the programme dashboard, appreciating it's a very lengthy document. So we have done that, and you'll see that at page 13, and that's probably where most of the items that we want to discuss or flag up during this section can be found. I think the first thing I want to pick up on is the annual conversation that took place a couple of weeks ago between the UK and the Scottish Government and PMO and members of Joint Committee. What we tried to do in this annual conversation was to have a forward look. Previously, we've looked back at what's happened over the previous year. On this occasion, we looked forward in terms of what's coming up in the next 12 months. And I think that was really appreciated by both governments because it's given them a bit more insight into what they can expect and what we're working on. And on that basis, I just want to kind of offer further thanks to Jennifer Craw, to Alan Mackay and Rebecca Allison for the presentations that they gave during the annual conversation. I think the feedback that we've had from the government is that it was a really good approach for them to understand what's coming next and to understand the direction of travel that those projects are taking and where they might be able to offer some support going forward. In the second half of the annual conversation, there were site visits. The first one was Seed Pod, and we had a fantastic tour around there. Real enthusiasm for what's going to come within that facility, and I think it really kind of brought to life what's happened through the deal and the impact that we might see from that in time. And then we went over to the Robert Gordon University, where we had two presentations. The first was on the National Subsea Centre, and the second was a demonstration of the Digital Innovation Lab. And again, feedback from government on both of those was fantastic in terms of the insight that it's given them in terms of what's been happening over the course of the deal. So we should be able to share a minute of that meeting once they've been drafted by UK government. The second thing that I just wanted to flag up during the section is in regards to the Port of Aberdeen and the 5G project that they have underway. That was previously approved by the Joint Committee. We don't have a sort of detailed update to bring you today, but we did discuss this at Programme Board. The kit that they had ordered and received has not been functioning as it should, and they're currently awaiting for new kit to be delivered to them so that they can then get that up and running. We anticipate there may be a slight delay, but we don't know yet the extent of that delay because the kit hasn't yet arrived. So as and when we know more information on that, we'll update the Joint Committee accordingly.
Thank you very much indeed, Stuart. Can I invite any questions from members, please? No questions at all on what we've heard. I think that's really, we should acknowledge and make sure we minute the good work and the very positive outcome from the conversation with governments, and also the positive feedback from their visits to the particular project site. So I think that's we should acknowledge that formally and record our thanks to everyone involved for that, and look forward to further positive outcomes as we go through the last part of this process. So congratulations to everyone involved. The positive feedback's been very welcome. No other comments or questions at all? I don't see any indications. If I'm missing you, please shout. Okay, so we can note the programme, the update from the dashboard and from officers, and move forward. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. That takes us then to item 7, which is the risk allocation for external transportation links to Aberdeen South Harbour project. And that's from pages 43 to 48 on your agenda pack. Can I ask Stuart, please, if you would introduce the paper, and then I'm sure other officers will come in. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling. Previously, we've been asked to bring back a paper to the Joint Committee to outline the process that requires to be followed for the environment of funding from the council contribution to STA across to the ETLASH project. What we've done to that extent is we've brought back this paper which outlines the process that would then require to be followed in order to enact that kind of prior agreement back in February 2024. There are 3 recommendations within the paper. One is to note the process. The second asks the Joint Committee to instruct officers of Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire Council to bring reports back to their respective committees seeking to vire that £575,000 from the STA project to the ETLASH project. That's in line with the agreement of Joint Committee in February 2024. And then item 3, we're asking or recommending that the Joint Committee agrees to reconvene a special one-item meeting of the Joint Committee at the earliest available opportunity following the latter of those two council meetings, and that would be to approve a material change request that would formalise the movement of that money. So we've tried to outline the process and the next steps and seek an agreement on those.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I'll open it up now for discussion, please. Councillor Allard, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask, you talk about February 2024. What did the two council agreed exactly on this STA money funding?
Is that to Stuart?
Yeah, sure. Back in February 2024, I don't have the paper in front of me at the moment, but my recollection from that was that the Joint Committee agreed to vire that funding. We've obviously recognised since then that the funding in question is council contributions. Therefore, there's a process which would need to be followed to enact that, and that's what we're bringing forward today. Following previous instruction from Joint Committee was to give clarity around what that process is and how that agreement of viring that funding back in February 24 can then be enacted.
Okay, Councillor Allard, content?
Yeah, thank you for the answer.
Thank you very much. Councillor Owen, please.
Thanks very much. I just thought I should just clarify our position rather than obviously be accused of holding item 7 up and the progress of funding procurement work, etc. We let the process run, i.e. we take a report to council, but through Anne and Gwyneth, we make our position very clear today, to be honest. Aberdeenshire Council will not support additional funding into this project, as we've had reassurances throughout. If needed, you could say we will commit officers to continue working together to seek other funding opportunities if possible. But that I just wanted to be clear that that's our position.
Thank you.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I wasn't, and then I pushed the button, so I beg your pardon. Kristen, Councillor Allard, please.
Thank you very much. I just want officers maybe to further clarify what I've asked earlier. This is not new money. This is money already in the deal.
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of prior commitments from each local authority, previously made a commitment to contribute funding to the transport theme of the City Region deal. What the ask here is that when councils previously committed their funding to the transport theme, there was an allocation to the strategic transport appraisal piece. And what we're looking to do here is asking each council to take that previously agreed funding from STA and move it across to the ETLASH project.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Petrie, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just to go back to something that was said there about the minute from February, and it said there was an agreement to vire. I just want to check. It's probably important that we have the word in there. Was it an agreement to vire, or was it an agreement to consider a virement? Because I don't want to get hung up in technicalities, but I think the difference in word in there would be important.
Mr. Hughes, do you have clarification?
I think just on that point, what I would say is that what we're trying to outline in this paper is the process by which to action that prior agreement. What we've discussed previously is that the funding typically within the deal is government funding, and therefore the joint committee can take, I'd say, an immediate decision, obviously subject to government approval or endorsement on that. What we have here is council contributions, and that's why it's a slightly different process, and it's that process that we're outlining within this paper.
Councillor Petrie, do you want to come back?
Yeah, sorry, and I understand that point, but I think my question was, I think you said that there had been an agreement to Vire. That's not my recollection, and maybe it was, but I think it's important. Was there an agreement that we Vire that money, or was the agreement that we consider the virement, which is in front of us? It's probably quite an important clarification.
Can I ask, please, if Mr. Marsden can bring up the minute from that meeting, just to be absolutely clear?
Yep. If you just give us a minute, I don't actually
Yeah,
hold that
I'll
minute
take-
because it was a Shire produced minute, but I'll see if I can find it.
Do any other contributions, please? We'll just continue the discussion. Councillor Allard, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Regarding the minutes, I was looking for these minutes and I couldn't find them last night. So that's maybe a point that officers can come back into this.
Any other contributions at this time? Oh, Councillor Allard. No, legacy. Okay. Do any of the other officers have the minute to hand? Mr. Wood, please.
As it happens.
Chair, through you, I think Councillor Petrie does raise an important point because it goes back to the stance that we've taken. Previously, there was a report through the Joint Committee which stated that both councils would and could contribute to this position. At that meeting, it was clear again from Aberdeenshire's perspective that that was presumptuous and we would not be supporting that. Hence, this paper and the process required generated from that. In the February meeting and the minute that I have seen, there wasn't a request or agreement to Vire. There was a reiteration that the project was progressing and would look to be within its budget. However, the fallback on the risk was to produce this paper around process. That's the sequence for me, and it's the process that we're talking about today rather than a commitment on funding. Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Wood. That's helpful. Councillor Petrie, on that basis, do you want to come back?
No, I think that it's been clarified in my mind then that there was no agreement to Vire per se, so it's still up for consideration. So I just think it's important we're careful with word in there because I don't want to be held to something if that's not what the agreement was last year.
Okay, thank you very much. So given, I think, and Mr. Woods brought us back to the point that this is about the process, whilst Mr. Marsden's looking for the minute, it is about the process. So any other views on how we proceed in terms of the recommendations here and the content of the paper? Mr. Marsden.
Stuart's now found that we've got the minutes, so Stuart will let you know what's in there.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Just in terms of the minute from the meeting in February 2024, it says approve the proposals for future business case development as set out in table 3.1 of the report. And in table 3.1 of the report, it showed an increase in the allocation to the Etlash project. And that's the basis upon which we've now brought forward a process for how we would enact that prior decision.
Can you absolutely clarify what minute you're looking at, please?
Yeah, it is the minute from Friday
Is
the
it
9th of February
the 9th of
2024.
February, item 9?
Yeah, item 9.
Councillor Petrie.
Sorry to come back in again in this, but that's so there's been an agreement to a potential increase in allocation, but that doesn't mean that we'd agreed to where the environment would come from or where that funding would come from.
Yeah, I think perhaps we need to try and move forward here, and I don't think we can perhaps come to a conclusion. So I wonder if anyone has any proposals to where we might want to discuss this further. Councillor Allard, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at Stuart. Are we disputing the minutes or are we agreeing with the minute? Was it approved or wasn't it not approved?
The minute of the 9th of February has been approved. The paper that we've got before us today is in response to an instruction that we received at the tail end of last year from Joint Committee to outline the process for that environment. So I'm not too sure what the ask here is, because we're bringing forward the paper that sets out the process. My understanding is that's what we were asked to do. So if there's any ambiguity, I'm perhaps unsure as to why that is.
No, I think we need to find a way through this, and I think perhaps taking this off table, either with delegation or without it. But Mr. Wood, you've got a proposal, please.
Chair, just to clarify, certainly from my perspective, the way that the paper's been set out and the minutes been explained, that there's no disagreement with the minute at all. There's no suggested changes there. It was just to understand the minute, and particularly around Councillor Petrie's point about environment. I think the minute's quite clear to bring back a paper and bring back a process. I mean, Joint Committee cannot commit either council's money. Joint Committee can ask that papers go back to councils for their consideration, and that's exactly what we're talking about here in terms of process. So no disagreement in the minute, no hold up in process, just to get that clarification, Chair.
That's helpful, thank you, Mr. Wood, and it's actually how we move this forward. So I'll be looking for a proposal in due course. Councillor Allard, please.
Yeah, I'm just repeating myself, Chair, but it's relocation of money which is already in the deal. Just let me add on this. We've got a paper following up this paper. I could suggest that we discuss this paper before we finish with this one, because I think they are very much linked. I will remind everybody as well, there's been years that I've been asked for this project to start, and just when we are ready to start it, we're finding a problem of process. So I will be more content if we could find outcome today. I think we don't want any more delays on that particular project.
I don't think any of us are looking for delays, Councillor Allard, but there's a principle here, and if one, what depends on another part of the process, and I think we need to be absolutely clear before we can make any agreement here. There is a process here. I'm hearing perhaps that there is a way through in terms of all of that, but we cannot commit either council to anything here in terms of spend. And we've yet to hear from Mr. Mackay in the next item, but does one depend on the other? And that's what we need to bottom out, and we need to look at all of that. You're quite correct, but I think until we get our way through and find a route in for the process, then we can't do anything else. So Councillor Radley, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick question around the strategic transport appraisals, where the money is being wired from. My understanding was that was the sort of descaling of the hydrogen project, and there was a couple of other things that sort of were put on the back burner to allow sort of movement between projects. Can we just clarify that?
Can someone pick that up, please?
Paul Finch is on.
Paul.
Sorry, I don't. Can someone pick that up? Is that Paul Finch?
Yeah. Yes, Chair.
You're on mute, Paul.
Yeah, there's no indication. I need indications to be able to bring people in. Thank you.
Can't hear you, Paul.
Can we return to that when Mr. Finch gets connected, Councillor Radley? I'll take Mr. Marson, you wanted to come in on something?
Yes, I've got Jess Anderson here from Legal from Aberdeen City who wants to propose something.
Well, can we just come back to that in a minute then, please? Is Mr. Finch be able to join us yet?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, can hear you now. Yes, Paul. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. The setting was incorrectly on my
No
Teams.
problem.
Just to confirm that prior to February 2024, the STA programme had envisaged spending or committing money towards some substantive work on hydrogen refuelers and mobility hubs. At the point of the end of that financial year, it became apparent that that would not be an appropriate way forward for those business cases due to ongoing higher than anticipated capital costs and some significant revenue implications which could not be covered by the deal. At that point, I proposed to the board how those, if we descaled those two projects, as Councillor Radley said, what would be the most appropriate use of the money that was then freed up from that descaling at that point. And that was the purpose of the February 24 paper, and that was and there are other aspects that were included in that that process as well, which included the inclusion of the Aberdeen Rapid Transit, or the re-inclusion of the Aberdeen Rapid Transit programme into the STA program. So that was the history of where the proposal in February 24 came down. Some programmes were anticipated to spend less, and at that time we agreed that that would be an appropriate way to explore in terms of the risk provision. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think your last sentence there is quite important, exploring and risk. Councillor Radley, do you want to come back? Haven't heard from Mr. Finch.
Yeah, I think that was really helpful. Thank you, Chair. So I guess in terms of the SCA budget, if it weren't vired, would that lead to a surplus? I'm just trying to understand where sort of the pots of money are.
Paul?
I think at this stage, if the money was not vired, then that money would still be held within the two council capital plans in terms of allocation to STA, and that would then go back to our transport working group to come up with proposals for the reallocation of that money if that was not deemed an appropriate way to go forward. Although with two years left of the deal, that might be a struggle to identify a business case development at that point.
Okay, Councillor Radley.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding correctly, if the environment, and I understand that there's a process going through here and it's for the councils to, make that decision. But if the environment wasn't approved by both councils, you would look to adopt additional projects into the deal through the Transport Committee. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think are we going down a track here that may not be entirely relevant, Miranda, but happy to hear from Mr. Finch, and then I'm going to move to Councillor Owen.
I think in essence there would be an unallocated sum within the STA budget if the funds were not vired, and then we would then consequently consider how to use that money at that point. I think that's clear.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Finch. Councillor Owen, please.
Yeah, I just want to be helpful here to try and get to move this on. We accept the process as per the report because we don't want to delay the process, and we can get a report to our council meeting, and we'll get an agreed date for that. Okay.
That's helpful. Thank you very much, Councillor Allard.
Yeah, I'm quite happy for Councillor Owen. If you mean that we agree with the recommendation at this point, we can go ahead to the next agenda item.
No, I'm afraid we can't at the moment because we need absolute clarity what we're agreeing here. So it's around the process. So if no one else wants to come in to speak, Councillor McClellan, please.
Thank you. I'm a wee bit confused. I guess just from what we've heard from Mr. Finch, we obviously have unallocated funds that we're talking about from moving from the STA budget to this project. I'm really confused as to why that's why there isn't clarity on that. We're talking about allocating unallocated funds to this project and why we can't agree to that at this time. to move that through the council processes.
Put your hand up.
Well, I think there's, oh, sorry, okay, on you go, Mr. McCarry.
Yeah, I think we're kind of caught up in the confusion here a wee bit. So there is a set of projects that the budgets have been allocated to, as Mr. Finch has outlined. And I think it's recognising that some of those projects can be delivered. Some of them are being delivered under budget, not necessarily over budget. And so the table that's in the report demonstrates how the money can be moved between the projects and still deliver the outcomes that was agreed. In response to Councillor Radley's point about if there's an underspend, you could find additional transport modelling projects. Yes, you could. However, you would not only need approval from joint committee, we would need government approval because it's a formal change then in our programme. And given the timeline of where we are in the deal, it's unlikely if we introduce new projects, we'd actually get them over the line in time. So whether we'll have new projects or not, the ability to actually spend the money is diminishing all the time because we're running out of time on the deal. What I would say is, yes, the money is allocated in both councils' respective capital plans towards the agreed SDA programme. However, if we don't need to spend that money effectively, I think that's the issue. If the programme's being delivered and we're not fulfilling the budget, it's up to the respective councils as to what they do, whether they wire the money into another project, which would require that element of change process to go through and be approved by the government, or they would simply decide not to spend the money in that way, I'd imagine, and step back from it. The one question that I did have is if one council does approve, for example, if we approve the recommendations today and one council does approve and one council doesn't approve, does that mean that there's approval for half the money so to be allocated? Given this a 50-50 split between the two councils that's been proposed.
Mrs. Beattie, would you like to come in at this point? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'm rather concerned that we're talking about money and money that's allocated. Can I just be perfectly clear? It's capital plan commitments. So it's not money that's sloshing around. It's money that both councils have committed in their capital plan, and both councils will have to borrow to fund this. So if these projects don't go ahead, then that results in us not having to borrow and results in savings to both councils. So I just want to make it clear, it's not cash that any of us have in the bank. We have to commit to borrow to fund these projects.
Thank you very much indeed for that clarity. I think that's very helpful. Councillor McClellan, did you want to come back?
Thanks. Yeah, but perhaps there's obviously 2 points now. There's the one Mr. McCarry raised in the first instance. I think it was quite helpful to hear that that there perhaps isn't time to introduce new projects, and I guess in my approach to this was that we have a clear project ready to allocate this funds to. So, again, sort of confused why we can't agree the recommendations on that point. The second point, though, in terms of the finances, I guess just perhaps for absolute clarity, and perhaps can we get absolute clarity what the both councils' contributions to the region deal is, and if that has obviously been agreed? Because I think, as we just heard, these are already committed to other projects, and therefore the council's contribution will be including that. So wiring it won't result in additional borrowing pressures on any local authority.
Mrs. Beattie, would you mind just clarifying that, please?
Yes, so the funding has been committed to the STA projects within the capital plan. I would require approval from council to change the allocation within the capital plan.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sterling. And Ms Beattie, I appreciate you require consent of council to change the allocation, but you're not changing the total borrowing amount and the total allocation to the City Region deal. It's just changing the projects there within. Am I not right?
Yes, you are correct, but I would need approval from council before I changed any allocation within the capital plan.
Thank you. So I guess just to be absolutely clear, there would be no additional resource request of Aberdeenshire Council if these changes went ahead.
No, there wouldn't be.
Thank you. And I guess finally, if we don't agree these recommendations, I guess just can we quantify the delay and what that'll mean for the project? Because I think, as Councillor Allard outlined, we obviously all want to see this project move ahead as quickly as possible.
Anybody, any views on that? I'll take Christian Allard, Councillor Allard in while you're considering.
Chair, it's Alan McCann. Quite happy to come in and answer that question. Apologies if you couldn't
Sorry,
see my
thank
hand.
you very much. That's fine. Wasn't seeing any indications. Thank you, Mr. Mackay.
Yes, so I suppose to clarify in terms of any potential implications on the programme, and without getting too theoretical, the approval of the environment of funds in terms of increasing the budget to allow the procurement to proceed sits near to the critical path, and any consequential delay on the timeline that's spoken about in the next item would directly go on to those milestones. So theoretically, if we're talking about committee processes, say 3 months, they would add 3 months on to the commencement of the works and the conclusion thereof. So it's on that kind of basis.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Thank you. Just, I guess, one final point. So if the money isn't wired but agreed by both local authorities, can the project proceed to procurement?
Mr. Mackay.
So the environment is based on the estimate that came through the outline business case when it was approved. That is the working estimate and budget at this stage. In the expectation that a pre-tender estimate comes in at a similar value, it would need to be fully funded before we could commence the procurement process.
Thank you. So really there could be a endless delay until a solution is found.
Yes, or some alternative approach to procuring the project.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allard, please, and then Mr. Macari.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'm getting a bit alarmed now. I hear voices telling us that the project couldn't go ahead, or there's going to be endless delays to it. I repeat what I said at the start of the discussion, Chair. This project was due to commence a lot before that it did. It's very unfortunate that we are at the end of the process and we've got it. I can't see how we can explain that the money has been allocated for transport. I think it would be difficult to explain how money has been allocated to transport and we can't reallocate that money to that particular project just because it come one of the last one to be able to be done. I've got very much an issue about this, this committee, this joint committee should work to make sure that we get our project which are feasible, done and on time, and it's what our officers are asking today, is to make sure that we get that done and done on time. Any delays today about what we're doing again with it will just make the risk higher, not the risk lower. So the money has been allocated. There is the two councils have approved for that money to go into transport appraisal. It's just a question of relocation. I'm happy for Aberdeenshire to look at a decision later on how we make the amount of money. But as far as I understand, it was approved that that money will be committed. So one way or another, that money will be committed. The worst thing could happen is that the project doesn't go ahead, like I heard earlier in this conversation, and we ended up with the money not committed at the end of the city region deal. I think that will be eggs on our faces for all of us.
But I think we've also had clear information from the finance officer as well, Councillor Allard. So I think we have to be really clear. Now, I've got some hands here. I'm going to take Councillor Owen, then Councillor Petrie, please, and try and work our way through this. Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Can I suggest a new two?
So we're looking at the recommendations on page 44. Yes, thank you.
So to replace two with this two, instructs the Chief Officer, City Development and Regeneration, Aberdeen City Council, and the Head of Service, Planning and Economy, Aberdeenshire Council, to submit reports to Aberdeen City Council and Aberdeenshire Councils respectively, to consider environment of 575,000 from the Strategic Transport Appraisal Project to the Aberdeen City Region Deal External Transportation Links to Aberdeen South Harbour Project. I can cut and paste and put that in the margin if that's helpful.
Mr. Martin, did you capture that?
Yes, I did.
Thank you very much. Before I take Councillor Petrie, Mr. Macari, you indicated previously, sorry.
Yeah, it's just to say that when we're talking about delays to the delivery of this road can't just be down to the funding discussion that we're having now, and we do need to hear the next paper to understand the process that we're going to have to go through, because if I understand rightly from reading the paper, there's a CPO inquiry during 12 to 18 months into the process if that's the case, and that's before construction can begin. So it's just to be clear that the delays aren't necessarily all down to finance. They could be down to the other processes that we'll have to go through in order to get to the point where we're in control of the road envelope before we can start building the road.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Macari. Councillor Petrie, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I would support the changed recommendation that Councillor Owen suggested. I don't think we're suggesting the project doesn't happen. I think we're suggesting that we aren't particularly comfortable with what's being suggested around environments. And I think, as Ms. Beattie has said, the money is allocated, but that money requires borrowing. So if we don't spend the Shire allocation, then we are saving on the borrowing costs. And I think we all know where all our councils are at in respect of finances. And it's us trying to say, we're not trying to delay this. We're just purely trying to find another way, or we are saying that we will work with you to find another way for that funding to come from somewhere else, because, you know, it wouldn't detrimentally impact our budget, but if we don't fire, then it means that our budget is in a slightly better position than it would be going forward, and I think that's the important point here.
Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully we can reach a consensus on the wording. It doesn't delay things, and it just moves the whole piece forward to the appropriate office, the appropriate committees. Councillor Allard.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question, but now I've got another one. Can Ms. Beattie maybe come back and repeat what she said about the borrowing? The commitment for borrowing is already made, whatever happened. So there'll be no saving at the end of the day.
Mrs. Beattie?
So the project, the commitment to borrow for STA is in both councils' capital plans. If there is no spending on STA, as originally indicated within the capital plan, then we wouldn't have to borrow. So if the remainder of the STA projects don't come to fruition, then the councils don't have to borrow to fund those remaining projects. If, however, both councils were to agree to the environment, then yes, the borrowing would have to go ahead. Does that make sense?
Councillor Allard.
It doesn't make sense, but it's bringing a question then that if we not committing of one of the project, the two councils will have to review all the projects, because we can't make savings on one project and not on the other one. My second question was, and I asked the chair if it was possible. I found it very difficult for us to agree whatever recommendation we have on this item before we hear the next item, because the next item, and talking about CPOs, Mr. Margaret talked about CPOs, is very important that we hear from our officers regarding the next item. I don't know if you want to take them on now, just to make sure we have got all the information that we need to take a decision on the present item.
Well, I think the proposal on the table is quite clear. The recommendations on page 44, we're asked to note the process, which would have to be followed. And one way or another, we have to go back through councils for any potential environment. So Councillor Owen has been quite clear that the wording up to respectively in recommendation 2, we go back to councils respectively to consider the environment of £575,000 from the STA project. Otherwise, the recommendations remain the same. So to me, it's pragmatic, and we can move things forward on that basis. So we are not, what we're removing from the recommendation on page 44 is the seeking approval. So it's simply a pragmatic way to move it to councils to get that discussion, or to have that discussion in the terms that's before us. So for me, that's a pragmatic approach, and hopefully everybody can agree that that small change can be agreed, and we can move forward. And the recommendation at 3 is to reconvene a one-off item, a one-off agenda in due course. So I think hopefully we can agree that that is a pragmatic way forward. It progresses the proposal, and we can come back in due course once both councils have considered it. Can we agree that?
Apologies, Chair. I've got a hand up.
I realise that. I was hoping that we could get to some sort of agreement.
Just got a couple of questions, if that's possible.
Well, if in that case, then I'm going to take Councillor McClellan first, because he's been waiting.
Thank you, Chair. I guess just to ask perhaps Councillor Aller's question again, but in a different way. Ms. Beattie, can you just clarify that the environment does not result in additional borrowing pressures for either local authority?
If I can just come back, please, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I'd quite like the officer,
sorry,
the finance officer to answer.
No, sorry, through the chair. Thank you. I think we have to be mindful that Mrs. Beattie has clarified this on a couple of occasions, and we're getting into some real detail that perhaps would be best discussed in council committees. So, Mrs. Beattie, if you want to reiterate the position, that would be helpful. But I do think we need to reserve some of this conversation for council committees. Thank you, Mrs. Beattie.
Yeah, so I will repeat again, both councils have committed to fund projects within the STA umbrella. That will, once these projects come forward, that would commit the councils to borrowing. If the STA projects don't go ahead, then the councils wouldn't have to borrow. If, however, both councils were to agree to transfer the money to this project, then yes, there would be borrowing required to pay for that.
Thank you for that clarity. Councillor Rodley.
Just, Chair, sorry, I wasn't finished.
But sorry, very quickly, please. Others are waiting, but I do think we need to conclude this item quite timiously. So, Councillor McClellan.
It's fine. I'll hand over to Councillor Radley.
Thank you very much. Councillor Radley.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a wee bit of clarity around the words being proposed by Councillor Owen. My understanding of the process is we're going to both councils to seek approval of the environment so that this project can progress. And I guess I'm not really clear why we would change that to consider, given we are literally seeking approval. Just a wee bit of clarity on that, if possible, Chair. And as a follow up to that, I guess, what council or committee would this be going to? From I'm aware of finance and resources in the council, but I'm not really sure what the process is for the.
It would be full council.
Okay, perfect. And my first question, if possible.
Yeah. First question, Councillor Owen, do you want to come back?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, please. Sorry, got a bit of a frog. Well, we are saying we do not support approval, but we are in agreement to take this to our council for a formal position. As has been stated by Mrs. Beattie and yourself, Chair, it has to go before our full council. That's the process for us. So that's why I'm saying that. Is that helpful or not?
If I can come back, Chair. Thank
Briefly,
you.
please. Thank you.
I guess in terms of Aberdeen City Region Deal Joint Committee, are we not asking the two councils to seek approval? So you've stated your position on the deal, but as Aberdeen City Region Deal Joint Committee, are we not asking for approval of the environment of funds which would allow this road project to proceed?
My interpretation of what's been said is that representatives from Aberdeenshire don't necessarily support that particular position, as you set it out, Councillor Radley, but what they are saying, or what Aberdeenshire is saying, is that we will take a report to committee, to full council, on the basis of this report. So there's no suggestion that it will not go to full council. It will, on the basis of this, there'll be a paper put before council, and it'll be made clear what the proposition is.
I guess I'm just not understanding why consider not seek approval, given that is essentially what we are doing. We're seeking a yes or a no to the environment of funds, and the no to the environment of funds means the road doesn't go ahead.
Councillor Owen, do you want to come back in again, or any of the officers, please? I think we're getting caught up in detail that perhaps could be best set out in papers that go to the relevant councils. It's based, the ask of the full council in Aberdeenshire will be based on this paper. So I hope that we can actually agree, so we can move this on, and there are no artificial delays. The council leader from Aberdeenshire is suggesting that a paper goes to full council. So hopefully that will be, and the options will be before council for determination, as it will be with yourselves.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. The legal officer in the room is wanting to come in.
Okay.
I think Mr. Masson had his hand up.
Don't see it, but thank you for your prompt. Thank you.
Hi there. I just thought I would come in and try and provide a little bit of clarification on process. So although the decision before the joint committee today is simply to instruct those officers to put a report to both our councils or their committees will be making the decision on any environment. I think that even if the decision today is to change the recommendation to reflect consider, the report that goes up to either council will need to have an affirmative action on it, as well as consider. So consider the situation, financial implications, the project implications should the environment not occur, and the surplus amount of money, again, should it not occur. So that needs to be in the council paper. But there would also need to be an action in officers to do something thereafter. So even though we put a paper to say consider, officers in this council will be recommending the next action would be to approve. Thank you.
Mr. Wood, can I bring you in, please, for clarification?
Chair, yes, I mean, I fully understand what my legal colleague is saying there. I think that the important differentiation is that as Aberdeenshire councillors on the joint committee, you're clearly stating what your view is. and at the same time fully respecting the fact that the process determines that you take this back to a council committee, in this case the full council. So I think the point about taking a report back, recommending environment, isn't reflecting Aberdeenshire Council's position. Therefore, the consideration of all aspects covers the current recommendation and covers your position. So it doesn't take away from the instruction of committee, but it does reflect the view that's coming through here strongly from yourself, and that consideration is there. You know, the recommendation, there's a recommendation change there. We could refine it further and say Aberdeen City looks to agree, Aberdeenshire looks to consider. The point is we will take a report back to council for their full consideration, then report back to joint committee. Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Allard, do you want to come back in? And then I think we need to try and draw this to a close and reach a consensus where we can move to actually progress this. Councillor Allard.
Thank you, Chair. I had my hand up for a long time. Is the reason I put something in the chat. I think it's very clear today that the two councils disagree. One wants to go ahead with the project, and the other one doesn't want to go ahead with the project. And I think that's a problem for me. It's particularly a problem for me when I've asked 3 times for our officers to tell us about what the consequences of whatever decision we take on that item will be on the progression of this. And I found it extremely difficult, Chair, that we're going to take a decision one way or another without hearing exactly what the consequences of such a decision will be made.
Appreciate your point and respect your comments, Councillor Allard, but I don't think anyone has suggested from either side that it's a case of whether the project goes ahead or not. That's not what's being debated here. The debate is around the wording, recommendation 2, which seems not to be unanimously supported, to be able to progress this, to take a report to both councils on the basis of this report. This is about the process, and we would really, I would really like to be able to move the process forward on the basis of the report and following the discussion. And it's a pragmatic way forward to be able to get a report to both councils, as has been suggested. So can we reach some sort of agreement where we can actually get a report to councils? Otherwise, we have stalemate and we can't proceed. So it's the process that I want to clarify. So with that change of wording on Aberdeenshire's behalf, we can certainly separate the recommendation to reflect the city position and the Aberdeenshire position and bring a report back. Councillor Radley, I think you're waving at me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Would it be possible to just take a short adjournment just to discuss? Thank you.
How do you want to do that?
5
Mr.
minutes?
Mawson, do you want us to leave the call and come back?
Just, yeah.
Yeah, we could just keep it on if it's only a short 5 minutes. Members could just switch off their microphones and their cameras at this point.
Okay, that's fine.
And then come
Thank
back
you
in
very
5.
much. If we can all do that. And so hang on a minute, it's 10:30. We're back at 10:40.
Thank you.
So we'll resume the item at 10:40. Can we put the recording off as well, please?
Oh, no. Ah. What's that? Probably somebody else.
Hi again, Councillor Stirling. There's been a request just for an extra 5 minutes. Apologies.
My apologies, Mr. Marson. My IT did not work, but an extra 5 minutes is absolutely fine.
Thank you. Just for those who have not seen the chat, just to let everybody know that the meeting has been adjourned till 11.
Serene, you've been waiting really patiently.
That is 11 o'clock, so can we resume, please? Thank you all for coming back, and thank you everyone for your patience. So we'll resume the conversation, hopefully to come to a conclusion. So does anyone have any final comments they wish to make before I move to the motion that's on the table? Councillor Allard, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I believe our joint committee is based on a tripartite. I would love to hear what one views are on this, as I remember Sayan being very strong and wanted the project to go ahead years ago, as opposed to go ahead now.
Can I just be clear, Councillor Allard, that's at least twice that you've suggested that because there's a change of the wording, the project will not go ahead. Can I just be clear that that is not what Councillor Owen said? Anyway, Mrs. Craw, you wanted to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it was just to Serena and I had a quick chat while we were on our break. I mean, I think our understanding of what's proposed is that there's a process being outlined whereby the change that's required will go to both councils to discuss what this change means in terms of the transport budget that was discussed in terms of how we're going to use it or lose it, to put it in summary.
Yeah.
However, the risk that has been raised and the possibility of the risk that's been raised is that that change may will give councils each the opportunity to approve or not the change, and that there's no guarantee, given that funding had been identified as potentially for one project within City Region Deal, there's no guarantee that each council will agree that it could be used for this purpose. I'm just actually wondering if that's what I'm summarising is correct, because it was getting rather confusing and rather technical for me, to be honest. So I'm just clarifying, we're all being asked to agree a process. The risk that has been raised in agreeing this process is that as each council consider this change, the councils will have the right to agree or not to the funding being allocated in a changed way, notwithstanding the commitment was there back in 2016.
Mr. Macari, do you want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, in a nutshell, Chair, Mrs. Cross, correct. So effectively, what we would be agreeing today, whether it's by the recommendations in the paper or the motion that the Shire Council have put forward, would be for the two councils to go back through their own governance process to seek approval as to whether or not they were to use the funding that they've committed to City Region Deal in this term, in this case, the transport assessment work, whether part of that funding was to be via to the project to deliver South Harbour Road.
Does that clarify that for you, Mrs. Craw?
Yeah, so it's a procedural
Yes.
issue we're being asked to approve, and just to reiterate and confirm, sir, Ian, and my commitment and to Councillor Allard's point, moving forward in terms of delivering the road is of the utmost importance in terms of driving forward energy transition. So of that, we're all agreed. I think in terms of procedural process, then obviously you can always speak for himself. I think I've just wanted to clarify I hadn't lost what I thought was quite straightforward in the first instance, notwithstanding each council will have the right to make their own decision.
Yep, that's helpful. Thank you for that. Okay, I don't see any other indications. We do have a motion. A motion has been proposed. Sorry, Serene, did you want to come in?
Not really. I'm frankly totally bemused at the way this debate has gone. So I can't add to this. The understanding was that the both projects, both of the 575, whatever it is, were going to go ahead, but there's obviously now some doubt about this. We must find a way, guys, to get through this and go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think then we are trying to reach a conclusion in terms of the process in the first instance, which would be helpful. So I think that's where we are. Christian Allard, beg your pardon, Councillor Allard, and then I am going to go back to the motion.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Jan and Jennifer, for your input. We absolutely agree. We want to go ahead, and that's the best way to do it, is to accept the recommendation as they are. So I intend to move the recommendations. Thank you.
Well, I do have again, just to put it in Councillor Owen suggested the motion that's in the chat. So I would seek a seconder for that, and based on the wording that's in the chat. So I do have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Petrie, you indicating? Yep. Councillor Petrie. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Allard, you want to make an amendment?
No, I want to move the recommendation as they are.
That's the amendment. So the motion is Councillor Owens that she tabled previously, seconded by Councillor Petrie. Your amendment is the recommendations as written. Yes. Do we have a seconder for that position, please? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Radley?
Yep, happy to second.
Fine, thank you very much. So we now have a motion and amendment situation. Again, Councillor Owen, Councillor Allard, do you want to sum up?
If I'm moving the motion, I'll speak first. But
no, sorry. Councillor Owen has the motion. You have the amendment.
So Councillor Owen is moving first?
You would I'm going to the amendment first for summation. Would you like to sum up?
I'm happy to sum up and happy to repeat what I said previously. I would have preferred to have the last item in the agenda to be discussed before this one, to see exactly the consequences of whatever alternation that we want to put on the recommendation of this item as they are. I think it's very important to reflect on the recommendation as they are. The reason they are the way they are with no modification is to limit the risk as much as possible for this project to not go ahead. Like Sagan Wood and like Ms. Clark, I absolutely agree that this project should go ahead. Not only should go ahead today, it should have been gone ahead years ago. So the fastest will be the better. And to my mind, the fastest is to follow the recommendation as they are. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Owen, would you like to sum up?
I have nothing more to add. Thank you very much. But what I will say is we have a plethora of full councillors coming up, so we can actually get this done very quickly.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Is everyone clear where we are with the motion and amendment? The motion is as printed in the chat bar. The amendment is the recommendation as written. So can we go to the vote, please, Mr. Marson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just as you said, the motion is with Councillor Owen. The amendment is with Councillor Allard. Would members please vote motion or amendment? Councillor Radley.
Sorry, Ms. Craw, did you want clarification before we move to vote?
Oh, yes, please. So, yes, please, a clarification. Sorry, I wasn't quick enough. So the as written is as per the original paper?
Yes.
Yeah.
On page 44.
Yes, and can I just clarify, the only difference is to consider environment?
Yes.
Effectively. Okay. So I guess this is back to just kind of understanding better council procedures in terms of as written versus in the comment. The decision of the joint committee cannot commit a respective council to a decision, as I understand is how joint committees operate. So regardless of what is written down in the papers as issued, the Aberdeenshire Council can still choose to not agree to the environment of the money, but that's not saying they don't agree to continue the process of the project moving forward. I think I'm trying to work out if the words are critical in terms of the project can still move forward. It can't, the contract, we're some way from awarding a contract.
Yes.
And for £575,000, which we might have to find more of anyway, because this project might, when it's returned in terms of tender, be more than that.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding what we're asking to vote on. Is it the fact that a process goes back to both councils to consider the environment, or the change rather than the environment, and in that process it will be within the gift of both councils to agree or disagree that, but the impact of that on progressing this project is only going to be halted if we get the wording wrong and somehow the re-examination of the funding gets in the way of moving forward on the project. I just really want us to make sure I'm not in a vote that is going to halt the project when actually it's a reconsideration of 575,000, a project that's plus 20 million and more, and I'm sure rising as we speak.
Mr. Mawson?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just pressing button for Jess Anderson to come back in again for legal.
Just maybe to clarify for Mrs. Craw about what the position is in terms of the original wording of the recommendation. I suppose the original wording is really just officers recommending that the paper that goes to Aberdeen City Council's Finance and Resources will be seeking a recommendation for approval, which is the way that that is written. It's up to the committee today to decide which recommendation it takes forward.
Mr. McCarty?
Yeah, and so the paper as written would require both the City Council and the Shire Council. Recommendation 2 would require City and Shire, if approved today, to report back to their own committees. So in the case of Aberdeenshire Council, full council, I think in the case of the City Council would be Finance and Resources Committee, with a paper recommending that the 575,000 that's currently sitting in the STA programme be transferred over, wired over to the South Harbour Road project.
So could I come back in, Chair?
Sure.
So if that original wording goes forward, it is still within the gift of Aberdeenshire Council to say we agree with the project moving forward, but we don't agree with the environment.
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yeah.
So either wording allows each council to agree the project continues to go forward, and either wording allows each council to make their own decision under their own governance in terms of whether they seek or will be comfortable to via the funding or not.
Mr. Wood?
Through you, Chair, short answer is that yes.
Okay, so I'm not clear, Chair, why we've got two different options in front of us, because it sounds like we're voting for something that's different from the other, and it's back to the principle of each council will make its own decision ultimately. And is it for officers to recommend something that's quite fundamental, as it seems now in terms of council? It just feels like it should be open to allow each council to make their own decision.
Mr. McCarty, I think you, or Mr. Wood, sorry, yeah.
Through you, Chair, I understand absolutely what Jennifer's saying. For me, the allow each council to consider and discuss and make their own decision is captured better under consider. The clear steer from the senior councillors here in Aberdeenshire is not to support the funding moving, but absolutely to support the road. And therefore our recommendation would be more appropriate under consideration rather than give a steer that isn't consistent with the view here. That's all. No delay, no negative against the project, but no to the funding. Therefore, how do we get the appropriate funding in place to ensure there's no delay and the road goes ahead? All of those things will be part of that, and therefore consider appropriately captures the view here from Aberdeenshire councillors.
Okay, so we do have a motion and amendment on the table. We have some done the summation. So Councillor Allard, I'm going to move to the vote if that's okay. Mr. Mawson, please.
Thank you. Just to repeat myself again, we have a motion in the name of Councillor Owen and an amendment by Councillor Allard. Please vote motion or amendment. Councillor Radley?
Amendment.
Councillor Allard?
Amendment.
Councillor Owen?
Motion.
Councillor Petrie,
Motion.
Councillor Stirling,
Motion.
Jennifer Craw,
Amendment.
Serene Wood,
Amendment.
and Councillor McClellan.
Amendment.
The amendment is carried by 5 votes to 3.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And that will be recorded. So thank you all very much indeed for your contributions. Councillor Radley?
Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. It's just to seek a little bit of clarity around when this will be going to Aberdeenshire Council. I'm aware of the date of the City Finance and Resources Committee. I think it's the 24th, 26th of March. Just to seek a little bit of clarity on when this will be going to
Councillor
Council.
Owen, is that something you'll be taking advice on?
It will be something I'll take advice on, but we do have a couple of meetings coming up. So if we can get it into one of those particular meetings, we'll be doing it way before the 26th of March, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Thank you. Okay, with that then, that concludes item 7. We move then to item 8 on the agenda, which is the external transportation links to Aberdeen South Harbour. It's a progress report. And can I ask Mr. Mackay, please, to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to do that. Once again, we have presented a progress report for the project. I can run through a couple of items that I can do a verbal update that have advanced since the report was published. Also highlight that beyond the normal progress update, there's also an ask for instruction to proceed on traffic orders associated with permanent traffic management measures as well. So since we last updated committee, OBC conversations continue with both governments, and we're obviously the previous item will aim to resolve some of the outstanding matters with the OBC as that progresses through. Detailed design for the project has continued and is progressing well. The structures element of the project is significant, and as highlighted previously to committee, some further ground investigation works were required to acquire extra data. They were concluded on site in December. To update in terms of the planning application item, which is item 5 in the part 3, we have now received planning approval for the project, which was submitted last year. So a positive step and a major milestone. On the compulsory purchase order, we've described within the report where we're at the time of publication. I'm happy to inform committee that the last objection has been withdrawn to the compulsory purchase order, and there's now should be no need to proceed to the local public inquiry. So again, another significant step forward. I will now be looking to move into the general vesting element of that once we have a decision back from a formal decision back from Scottish ministers. Procurement is now commenced in terms of the earliest part of the process, with the expression of interest out to those that are on the Scottish Civil Engineering Construction Framework, and we're awaiting responses from those parties. And that, in terms of the progress updates, is where that concludes within the report. Within the latter part of the report, we've brought forward information on the constructability assessment, which was requested by committee, considering the timeline for executing the works and also the temporary traffic management that would be required. Having gone through 3 broad scenarios involving road closures, one-way systems and two-way shuttle working, we have concluded in the report that a one-way with limited closures of the road is the most appropriate way forward, and we'll look to include that within the contract. And the last element of the report is considering further requests from committee and feedback that we've had from stakeholders around the impact of through HGV traffic on Torry and Cove, analysing information that was taken from site last year. And fundamentally, we're proposing a restriction on St Fittick's Road to limit HGV through traffic following completion of the scheme and removing an element of nuisance from Torry. There is not a proposal to do any traffic order restriction through Cove, given the numbers that were seen in the review, and the realignment of the road should take care of most of that HGV traffic in terms of providing a much more appropriate and desirable route. So there's no further proposal at this time for the south end of Coast Road beyond the limits of the project. So that's a short summary. I'm quite happy to take questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mackay, for that update. Can we take any questions or any comments? Councillor Owen, please. You're on mute, Councillor Owen. Sorry.
Don't.
Apologies for that. We didn't put the thing back on again. So could you just reiterate again about the position we are actually in terms of the compulsory purchase order? Just could you just go over that again? So are there any objections now? And under the bit where it says about the land will fall to the Crown because the company's is dissolved. Just go over that a bit again, would you please?
Through you, Chair. Yes, happy to clarify. So in terms of objections to the CPO from interested parties, at the time that the objection period concluded, we had received, or Transport Scotland had received 2 objections through negotiations. Both of those objections have now been removed. And at the time of writing the report, we were heading towards public inquiry, and a reporter had been appointed with 3 meetings to have been held this week. But that second objection was withdrawn in sufficient time that those meetings were no longer required, and the public inquiry will not be necessary also. So in terms of the process from this point on, we'll expect that to be handed back from the DEP to Transport Scotland for ministerial decision. Once we've received that, we'll move through the process of vesting the land, and that's what the programme timelines later in the report are based on. In terms of the involvement of KLTR, that conversation and discussions are ongoing with them. It is in a cooperative and positive vein. It is a complicated process around liquidation and establishing exactly the position of the land itself, having the company having been dissolved, but it's a process that is being worked through, and at this point in time we don't see that moving to the critical path. It should be resolved in good order, and we'll obviously report that back to committee when that has occurred, but yeah, it is well underway.
Thank you for that clarification. Could I just say, so we don't have a timeline for that? So that could be quick, it could be long.
In terms of the timeline, there's not an exact timeline to that. In terms of the professional advice that we've received from legal officers and external support, we don't believe that should be a duration that will impact on the GVD being made. Albeit it's always a risk with external processes that they might extend beyond the anticipated time. But yes, until they are concluded, they are not, and we'll be looking to make sure that is done in appropriate time.
Sorry, Chair, can I just say that? So, but can we still continue the work even without knowing that outcome?
At this stage, it is not holding up any element of the work.
Okay, that's fine.
Can I, if I may, can I just understand what was said about the traffic position, and I mean, what are we saying about the access, the traffic access? What are the restrictions there? Are there significant restrictions?
Just come in, Mr. Mackay.
Yes, so there are two elements around traffic that were presented to committee today. One is around the construction phasing, so while the works are ongoing to construct the new bridge and road, and the other aspect is a permanent change following the full opening of the scheme. In terms of the permanent situation following the opening of the new road, what's in front of committee today is considering restricting putting a width restriction on St Fittick's Road to the north of Aberdeen South Harbour to dissuade heavy goods vehicles using Tory, in particular Victoria Road, as a through route once the new fully to standard route via Coast Road and Hairness Road is in place. It is an issue that has been in play since South Harbour was originally developed. South Harbour's own methodology for taking access and egress for large goods vehicles is all from the south route that we're improving through the project. Albeit the investigations last year showed that there is through traffic using it as a through route via Tory to gain access to the city, and it's to deal with that matter at the same time as the project. So in terms of access to and from South Harbour, its intended route will always be there and available, and obviously upgraded as part of the project. Hopefully that answers the question.
Sorry, would you like to come back? Yep.
Yes, if I may just, are we saying that this second road, whatever we're going to call it, is going to be sufficient to carry meaningful traffic?
Yes, so to confirm, the roads provided through the project will provide a step change in terms of the provision, not only for the day-to-day traffic required to access harbour and industrial areas around it, but also cater for anticipated abnormal loads, both width, height, weight, that we've received feedback through the development of the project. The permanent traffic order is around limiting use of less appropriate routes through Tory and encouraging the use of the new facility.
Okay, but if I may, we will have roads large enough to carry the key traffic required for that area.
Through you, Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Radley, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to Cove and the Coast Road that comes off of Cove. You had mentioned that there is no plan changes for that section. Will there be any avenue for residents who, potentially could see an escalation in HGV traffic to feed back into the process and raise any issues?
There certainly can be an opportunity for that. One of the aspects upon completion of the project is around monitoring and evaluation, and with this baseline, we have the opportunity there post-opening to monitor the situation on Coast Road and into Cove as well, to see how that transpires. So not only can members of the public potentially raise any concerns, but we could have the data there to see how things have gone.
And if I may, Chair.
Yes, of course, just come away.
Thank you. I guess a big concern is around construction traffic. It was a big concern during the building of South Harbour for residents in that area. Is there going to be a concerted effort to point people in the right direction, lorry drivers, HGV drivers, making sure that they are accessing the correct routes and not going through a residential area?
Through yourself, through you,
yes,
Chair.
Please, just don't wait. Just come in.
Yeah, within the contract conditioning will be detailing appropriate routes for works traffic for that very reason.
Okay, Councillor Radley.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Allard, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me thank officers for the work that they've done and the very good news about compulsory purchase orders. I think that we can all be delighted that the process is cracking on. And of course, as again, would touch on the road, but it's not only the road, it's a new bridge as well. Can I have some reassurance that the new bridge will take abnormal load weight a bit more than the Queen Elizabeth Bridge is taking just now, just to make sure that not a lot of the traffic will be redirected like it is just now from Elizabeth Bridge into the Tory Bridge. Just wanted to know what kind of bridge we are talking about, and will it have the same restriction as the Queen Elizabeth Bridge, or will it be a more sustainable bridge? Thank you.
The Chair.
Yeah, just
yes,
come away with some okay, yeah.
In terms of the abnormal loads route and the specification, the quality of service as we presented to committee some time ago, the baseline of that was a starting point where it was at least providing an upgrade on existing routes and looked to ensure that that abnormal loads of all types were able to access the trunk road network and be able to get themselves to other parts of the city and Shire without the project relieving any restriction that's present near the harbour facility itself. That was an extensive exercise out to the AWPR connections and should provide a suitable route for what we anticipate into speaking with stakeholders might materialise through the port. Just to say to committee, just appreciate that it is difficult to look too far into the future as to what new abnormal loads may come along, but we certainly feel that we've done the most diligent exercise in identifying at this point in time what the likely demands would be, and that they should all be catered through the new project roads and onto the road and AWPR.
Councillor Allard.
Yeah, that's me reassured, Chair, and I like the way and put it saying that Mr. Mackay put it, but saying that it will be an upgrade. Time will tell if that new bridge will be as good as a good old Victorian bridge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions at this point? Take any indications? Councillor Owen?
Sorry, I had trouble getting my hand up.
It's okay.
Just on the back of what Christian's just said, so given that time is obviously of the essence and obviously marching on, and the project hasn't yet gone out to tender, how confident are we that the road and associated bridge will be deliverable within the funding envelope, including the additional 1.1 million that was the subject of the last item on the agenda?
Mr. Mackay? Yep.
Yeah, I think similar to the answer provided at the last committee, we're currently proceeding on the estimating exercise as part of the OBC, and we're confident in that assessment insofar as it goes that the project can be delivered. There will be a further estimating exercise immediately prior to commencing the procurement, which will provide us with further reassurance on the commencement of that exercise. Fundamentally, with construction, it is only at the point of receiving costing from the market that we can be assured sufficiently that we can proceed at that stage. As committee will be well aware, there's been a significant amount of turbulence in the construction market over the last number of years, and we have most definitely done our utmost to reflect that within estimates to date, but the crunch is when the market responds. So thank you.
Councillor Owen, you wish to come back?
Yes, please. I mean, as I said, I think I said back in September, we Aberdeenshire knows only too well in terms of the construction costs and the increases, particularly in terms of one of the Peterhead Community Campus that we're undertaking to build. So I know that those costs have gone. I think I'm right in saying probably doubled from what we initially thought they were going to be. So what happens if you actually go out? You draw it all up, and then it comes back to it exceeds the funding envelope. What happens then?
Chair, to clarify, in the immediate case that we received a tender that goes beyond the budget, we would not be able to award that, and we would be reporting back to committee on that basis with any options that were available at that time.
So that's the contingency coming back.
Sorry, just to clarify in terms of at the point where we're commencing the procurement process, that has been described in previous papers, looked to estimate where the market is, what the likely costs will be incurred, and also provide for contingency and risk over and above those items for things that are less known. If from after we receive the responses from the market, those are out of kilter, the magnitude of that will determine potentially what those options may be, and we would have to report back to committee at that stage with which options we would suggest being taken forward.
Okay, Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you. As I said, I shared in September with everybody the increased costs of the Peterhead Community Campus, which were pretty devastating and have had a huge impact and will have a huge impact on our capital plan. So I shared that with you back in September to just try and make sure you understood that construction costs are, way out of kilter at the moment. I think they may be coming down a wee bit, but not as much as everybody would have liked on that basis. But yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I think the question here is the affordability of the project and the time scale. At what point do we trigger a report back, and where would the additional funding be coming from if the procurement process threw up an extraordinary figure for us to consider? Councillor Radley, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just off the back of some of the questions. In terms of delays to the project, so if we get agreement from the Shire Council, agreement from the City Council around the environment of funds, are you content that I think within the papers there's a deadline of the 30th of March. Are you content that the tender process can go ahead at that point?
Yes, those dates are based on the presumption that those other processes you referred to will be proceeding as expected.
Okay, and I guess then if that weren't the case, what impact would delays and potential having to come back to joint committee, what would that have on the overall project timeline?
So, you Chair, similar to the answer under the previous item, the commencement of the procurement is on the critical path. Therefore, if anything that inhibits that procurement will have a consequential knock-on within the programme. As part of the procurement regulations, we need to ensure that we've got sufficient available budget at the time of going to procurement to execute the procurement and award it on the proviso that it comes in at the right value for money. So fundamentally, any additional week, month is added on to when we might start on site, and therefore where we might conclude. So it is a direct relationship between making sure that procurement starts with an understanding that the budget is in place.
So just to be clear, Mr. Mackay, I mean, clearly we've heard already from both councils, representatives from both councils about timelines, which would meet that particular time frame that you've set out. So I don't think that's in any doubt that that's understood, that the timeline can be met. But if either or both councils, for the sake of argument, determined that they would not approve the environment as previously discussed, what accommodation have you got, or contingency, to use that word, to fill that gap, should there be a gap in terms of 500,000 or 1 million? And in the great scheme of things, are you confident that the funding envelope that's already been presented will accommodate the delivery of the road, the contingency, and all the rest of it? Because if not, what's the plan for additional funding?
Yes, Chair. So at the moment, the project's proceeding on the basis of the agreed OBC, which included the environment of the funds. Also within that OBC was the intention to seek other sources of funding. At this stage, a number of those have been ruled out and unavailable. That continues to be something that will happen in the background. However, the number of opportunities listed there is narrowing in terms of anything that's likely to bring forward further contributions. So at the moment, that is the basis has been what's agreed within the OBC. Should that funding not become available, I think we would return to some of the options that were presented at the time that the OBC was approved, in terms of the other sources of funding contained within that. Obviously, at that point in time, it was determined that those different alternatives would be continued to look at as part of the OBC. But as I say, at this stage, only the environment has allowed us to proceed with the procurement, or that has been the working assumption. In terms of anything alternative, it would be a revision of that paper in terms of the scope.
No, thank you very much for that. Councillor Radley, sorry, do you want to come back?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Just one more question, just following on from what Councillor Owen was saying. It was my understanding that there was an instruction to report back to every joint committee about the project. Is that still the case? And therefore, if there are any issues, it can be flagged at every joint committee, or an extra joint committee could be organised if there was a specific issue.
Mr. Buse or Mr. Mackay, do you want, or Mr. McCarry, does anyone want to take that? But I presume that would be, by exception, that would be the case. But one of the officers want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can pick up on that one, Councillor Sterling. Each joint committee meeting that we have, there is a specific report brought forward on this project that was requested some time ago. So we'll continue to do that, and obviously look to flag up any risks and issues as and when they arise. If there was anything that was considered especially urgent, then again we would look to try and reconvene through an urgent meeting of the joint committee.
Okay, Councillor Radley. Yep.
Yeah,
okay,
that's reassuring.
Perfect. Fine, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions, comments, observations? Don't see any indications, so thank you for your questions. The recommendations are on page 49. To note the ongoing discussions with both governments with regard to the outlined business case. Note the progress of the scheme with regard to the ongoing detailed design work, planning application, and the progression of the compulsory purchase order. And instruct the Chief Officer, Operations, Aberdeen City Council, to progress all necessary consultations and traffic orders required for the implementation of a width restriction on St Fittock's Road. Are those recommendations agreed?
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes, agreed. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mr. Mackay, for your report and for taking us through that. That concludes business for today. So thank you all very much indeed for your interest in the business, and thank you everyone for your contributions and participation. Thank you so much. Thank you. The meeting is now closed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.